Welcome to Mental Flight, where bold ideas take off and untold truths soar beyond the limits of ordinary thinking. Then fasten your mind, you're cleared for takeoff. They told the world cotton was just a crop, but for millions, it has always been a lifeline. And in the quiet corners of the global market, two nations nobody expected, Burkina Faso and Bangladesh, have just shaken the system so hard that even the biggest players are scrambling to understand what happened. This is not a story about agriculture. This is a story about power, leverage, and the kind of defiance that forces billion-dollar corporations to play by rules they never agreed to. At the center of this upheaval stands a man the West underestimated from the start. Ibrahim Traoré, the young, heavy-muscled former soldier with the sharp eyes of a strategist and the determination of a man who's been fighting his whole life. Didn't rise to power in Burkina Faso just to manage the country. He came to rewrite its place in the world. And when he looked at the way global cotton trade had been rigged for decades, he saw an opening so sharp and dangerous that it could cut through the very fabric of the system. Cotton has been called white gold for centuries, but the way the market works has always favored the giants, American, European, and Chinese buyers who dictate prices, control supply chains, and squeeze producers until they can barely survive. For countries like Burkina Faso, where cotton is a key export, the profits often vanish long before they reach the farmer's hands. But Traoré's vision was bigger than just fairer prices. He saw cotton not as a raw material to be sold cheaply, but as a weapon to leverage economic independence. To do that, he needed allies, not just political ones, but nations with similar struggles, similar wounds, and the courage to fight back. That's where Bangladesh enters the picture. Most people know Bangladesh as a global hub for textile production, one of the biggest in the world. But few realize the brutal trap it's been stuck in. Factories churn out billions of dollars worth of clothes, yet the nation itself remains at the mercy of foreign brands that control orders, prices, and production schedules. For years, Bangladesh fought for better terms and fairer pay, but it was always forced to compete against cheaper labor elsewhere. It's that when Traoré's strategy collided with Bangladesh's ambitions. Instead of working as separate weak players in a massive rigged market, they decided to link their strengths. Burkina Faso had the cotton. Bangladesh had the factories. Together, they could cut out the middlemen and create a supply chain that bypassed traditional power structures. In theory, it sounds simple. Reality, it's nothing short of revolutionary. The first step was secrecy. The big buyers found out too early, they would crush the plan before it even started. Negotiations were carried out quietly, often in small meetings away from the public eye, with trusted advisors and trade experts mapping out every possible move. The goal was to create a direct trade corridor between West African cotton producers and South Asian garment manufacturers. In better prices for both sides, and removing the leverage of foreign-controlled brokers. By the time whispers of the deal began to leak, it was too late for the giants to stop it without revealing their own fear. That's when the pressure began. Lobbyists pushed for trade penalties. Media outlets, quietly backed by corporate interests, began painting Traoré as reckless, accusing him of destabilizing the market. But the young president wasn't interested in playing defense. He doubled down, speaking openly about Africa's right to control its own resources and blasting the hypocrisy of nations that preach free markets but manipulate them in secret. What most outsiders didn't see was that this wasn't just about cotton, it was about a blueprint. If Burkina Faso and Bangladesh could pull this off, the same model could be applied to other commodities, from cocoa to gold to rare earth minerals, and that terrified the old guard. The deal itself worked like a tightly woven fabric. Burkina Faso's farmers would receive direct payments at fair market rates, cutting out layers of brokers who took the lion's share of profits. Bangladesh's factories, in return, would get a stable and high-quality cotton supply at prices that undercut what they were paying to middlemen while still giving producers a better deal. The effect was immediate. Smaller West African nations began asking for talks with Bangladesh. Textile unions in South Asia saw an opportunity to demand better working conditions since supply costs were falling. And quietly, very quietly, Western brands began adjusting their sourcing strategies, knowing they could no longer bully both ends of the chain at once. But with every move forward, the resistance grew sharper. The International Cotton Association, dominated by Western interests, began drafting new quality regulations aimed at disqualifying African cotton. Certain shipping companies mysteriously started delaying or rerouting cargo from Burkina Faso. It was economic warfare without a declaration. And in the middle of it all, Traoré kept pushing, his reputation growing not just as an anti-colonial leader, but as a tactician capable of playing the long game. In speeches, he reminded his people that the fight for independence isn't just fought with guns, it's fought in boardrooms, trade negotiations, and factory floors thousands of miles away. Every bale of cotton that reached Bangladesh without going through the old system was another bullet fired in the war for economic sovereignty. The partnership also became a rallying point for Pan-African unity. Across the continent, commentators began asking why African nations should compete for scraps when they could coordinate and negotiate from a position of strength. Suddenly, cotton wasn't just an agricultural product. It was a symbol, a banner under which nations could rally against decades of exploitation. And while the West tried to downplay it as a minor trade agreement, in reality the shockwaves were already moving through the market. Prices in certain futures contracts began fluctuating wildly. Investors and textile giants grew nervous. Quiet phone calls were made between governments that had never cared much about Burkina Faso before, because they knew if this model spread, the world's supply chains would never be the same again. As night fell over Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré's vision was already in motion. While the world still thought of Burkina Faso as a struggling agricultural nation, Traoré was orchestrating a silent revolution in the cotton fields. This wasn't just about growing cotton. It was about rewriting the rules of global trade that had kept African farmers trapped for decades. With a background as a soldier and the physique of a young bodybuilder, Traoré approached leadership like a battlefield strategic, relentless and unafraid of confrontation. His first move was radical: cut out exploitative middlemen who dictated prices and introduced direct trade agreements with manufacturers. But here's where the real twist came. He didn't just focus on traditional markets in Europe or America. Instead, he reached across continents. Forging a groundbreaking alliance with Bangladesh, a country thousands of miles away that had mastered the art of textile manufacturing, this wasn't just economics, it was geopolitical warfare fought with trade agreements instead of bullets. The real power of the Burkina-Bangladesh deal was not just in its profits, but in the precedent it set. For the first time in modern history, two developing nations had bypassed the global north entirely in a major commodity supply chain. It was proof that a multipolar world was not just theory, it could be built in practice. It's one trade deal at a time. Still, Traoré knew this victory was fragile. If Burkina Faso remained solely an exporter of raw cotton, it could be undercut or replaced. The long-term survival of this new trade route depended on value addition, processing the cotton into thread, fabric, and garments right in Africa. Here, the alliance deepened. Bangladesh agreed to send engineers, textile experts, and machinery to help Burkina Faso establish its own manufacturing plants. The vision was audacious, not just to grow cotton, but to produce clothing stamped with "Made in Burkina Faso," ready for global markets. In just 3 years, this partnership had altered global cotton flows, shaken entrenched interests, and inspired other nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America to consider similar alliances. The so-called cotton shockwave was no longer confined to trade journals, it was front-page news in financial capitals. And while critics continued to predict its collapse, the deal endured, becoming a case study in how unity between the global South could challenge centuries-old economic hierarchies. Now, here's where you come in. If you're watching this, you've seen the power of leadership, vision, and courage in action. You've seen how one man, a dark-skinned African soldier with the strength of a bodybuilder and the mind of a strategist, rewrote trade rules that were designed to keep his people down. You've seen that change doesn't come from waiting, it comes from action. From building alliances that others say are impossible. If you believe the world needs more leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told louder and to reach more people, then here's what you can do right now. hit that subscribe button. Like this video and drop a comment sharing your thoughts on this new model of trade. Because the more people know about this, the harder it becomes for the old systems to quietly push it back into the shadows.